In the book Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, the author said, "It is human nature to shrug off what may seem to us as a vague threat of future disaster." This is similar to the case of BPA in the United States. We believe companies that use BPA in their products should be held accountable for the detrimental health effects faced by the victims because of their epigenetic evidence. BPA, or bisphenol A, is an estrogenic compound, meaning it is functionally similar to estrogen, the female sex hormone. BPA has a feminizing effect in humans by upsetting the androgen/estrogen ratio and causes endocrine disorders, especially in men. BPA can be found in metal can coatings and polycarbonate drinking bottles. When food or drinks come in direct contact with the packaging material, BPA can actually migrate into the consumable product, and this process can be accelerated by an increase in temperature. Humans are commonly exposed to BPA because of its ubiquity. In July 2012, the FDA banned BPA in baby bottles and sippy cups. In July 2013, the FDA banned BPA in infant formula packaging. In other countries such as Canada, they have gone as far as to ban BPA for its harmful health effects. Not only has it been proven that BPA can have immediate health effects to an individual, but it is also being found that BPA can affect the second and third generations. In a study by Manicom, 2 varying doses of a mixture of plastic-derived endocrine disruptors, including BPA, were exposed to female F0 mice in a critical point of the pregnancy. The study concluded that there was an increase in the total diseases and abnormalities in the offspring and future offspring in both male and female mice. These abnormalities included testes disease, obesity, ovarian disease, prostate disease, and kidney disease. The epigenetic evidence the victims have that their genes have been hypomethylated is proof that either their parents passed down the epigenetic marker to them or that their genes were altered during a critical point of their pregnancy. In another study about placental transfer and the perfusion of BPA by Balakrishnan, placenta were obtained from healthy singleton pregnancies. The perfusion rate of BPA was found to be 27%, as opposed to the positive control, which was 25.5%. This study proved that chemicals such as BPA can be passed to the placenta wall from the mother to the infant. The FDA has already banned BPA in baby bottles in the US, yet infants can still come into contact with BPA as it perfuses through the placenta wall. The ban on BPA should be extended since BPA products can still get to the infant through the mother.
Yeah, and furthermore, according to a study by Canale and others, they essentially detailed a certain selection method. Essentially, a molecular imprinted polymer is coated on a stir bar, and the stir bar is, the method is called stir bar sorptive extraction. Essentially, you stir this bar into a liquid containing BPA, and even in high volumes of water, this method can have near 100% extraction rates. This essentially means that this method exists for removing BPA from systems, but companies are making the conscious choice not to implement this system. So this is one reason that companies should be held responsible, because this method exists that they are simply ignoring, even in the face of these very distinct endocrine disorders that these victims have.
As previously stated, we support the victim's stance that companies should be held responsible for the detrimental health effects caused by BPA. Our studies prove that BPA causes an increase in testes disease and ovarian disease. We have also given examples, such as Canada banning BPA, and viable extraction methods that prove that companies have the ability to remove BPA from their systems. Without a doubt, the fault for these victims' disease is that of the company, and they must pay reparations.
The issue at hand is if manufacturers of plastic should be held accountable for the detrimental effects of BPA. We believe that no, the manufacturers of plastic should not be held accountable for these. There are a couple of reasons as to why we believe this. First of all, we don't know for sure that the epigenetic effects actually came from BPA. While the DNA hypomethylation was consistent with the known effects of BPA, That doesn't necessarily mean that BPA was a or even the sole reason behind the health impacts. Diseases could be caused by other toxins, not necessarily BPA. And there is no way to track exposure or lifestyle of the people suing.
And even if these proven effects are from BPA, this case is against the plastic manufacturer. According to an article published by University Health News on September 6, 2013 in Access Tuesday, the BPA does not just come from plastics. It can also come from places like cash register receipts, canned foods, and fast food. In 2011, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration conducted a study of amounts of BPA found in various canned foods. Of the 78 canned foods that were tested, 71 of them were found to contain BPA. According to an article from Environment International, published in 2013 in Access Tuesday, researchers from the University of California, Berkeley, studied pregnant Mexican-American women and found that the number of sodas and hamburgers consumed per week directly correlated to the amount of BPA found in their urine.
In addition, epigenetic changes are intrinsically reversible. There's an opportunity for an epigenetic intervention through drugs and a change in diet to restore normal epigenetic status.
Finally, and most importantly, there is not enough research or concrete evidence to prove conclusively that epigenetics exists. If epigenetics does exist, it would affect 3 generations: the pregnant mother, her fetus, and the reproductive cells of the fetus. Of the so-called victims that were able to conceive, none of the offspring have symptoms of ovarian or testicular disease, even though some are young adults currently going through puberty, which is when the symptoms can begin to present themselves. Because of the previously stated reasons, we believe that the manufacturers of this plastic should not be held accountable for these health effects.
So one thing you guys said is epigenetics just does not exist. It's not scientifically proven. However, according to identical twin studies, even though they have identical DNA, they end up growing different phenotypes at birth, which is after birth, which is evidence that there was some sort of methylation change that affected their phenotype. Furthermore, even though that in the Human Genome Project, they expected to find about 100,000 genes in the human genome because there's 100,000 proteins. However, they only found 22,000 genes. Ergo, one gene could code for multiple proteins. This is evidence that epigenetics does in fact exist.
You also stated that you can't say for sure that all these different health effects and whatnot are solely coming from BPA, and it actually says in the question that they have done epigenetic testing of genes that have been shown to become hypomethylated upon BPA exposure, and believe this evidence suggests the culpability of the company. So it could there could be other chemicals involved, but there is a direct correlation between the chemical BPA and the health effects that are present from these companies, because it actually states it in the question.
You guys also mentioned that these victims may not show symptoms, so there's no possible way that this is an epigenetic case. However, a lot of these endocrine diseases, you guys mentioned were puberty onset, but a lot of these, including ovarian disease, prostate cancer, testicular disease, a lot of these onset more in the middle ages of development rather than puberty. So these people may very well have the hypomethylated genes to have these diseases. They just show no signs of them.
And it was also brought up that epigenetic changes and health problems are intrinsically reversible through items such as the environment and different medicines and drugs that can be developed. And although that is true, there aren't really drugs to treat any of these things yet because they have to be FDA approved, and there's so much more needed research that has to be done for any of this to even reach something near FDA approval. That's really not a current solution that we have to these problems.
You guys remember those mice? Those targeted the methyl in every single gene. Furthermore, you guys mentioned that there's other sources of BPA besides simply plastic, such as hamburgers, which is true, but I think it's very important that since this plastics is a definite source, it is a contributing factor, and therefore the companies, since they do contribute to this, should still be held responsible, even if they do not contribute to all of it.
Okay, so you guys started off with a quote from Rachel Carson, who's like obviously a very well-known scientist in her field. She talked about how it's important to nip these scientific problems in the bud, these potential crises in science, which she did with pesticides and how pesticides affect humans. But she didn't jump into litigation. She jumped into research first. She got a background. She understood why there should be litigation against the problem. And where we are right now, we're just not ready to jump into litigation and just start suing companies. As of right now, the Environmental Protection Agency doesn't even have a risk assessment method for epigenetic harm. Additionally, when it comes to research on epigenetics, a lot of it comes from mice. And it's stated from the Ghost in Our Genes, Legal and Ethical Implications of Epigenetics, that epigenetic consequences are often very species-specific. So something that we notice in a mouse could be completely different in a human. We simply don't have enough research, enough causal understanding. We have correlation, but we don't always have causation. And with litigation, there has to be an absolute clear causation in order to sue. And finally, it's also notable that according to the University Health News, many water supply lines have caused problems that are similar to the problems caused by BPA. So as you guys have stated, there is a correlation between BPA and the problems caused in the subjects, right? But the problem is there's so many other factors, such as the water supply lines, that could contribute to that. So while we don't necessarily argue that BPA may cause epigenetic effects, it's so hard to say that it's specifically one company. It's so hard to prove that in a legal setting.
And also, you kept on saying this is what BPA does, but there has to be a subclinical epigenetic defect that affects. It's completely causal, but thus far it's only been correlational.